We want you to get involved in tonight's broadcast. Use the hashtag AllStarLive to tweet in a photo and answer the question, who is the All-Star in your life and why? We will be sharing those tweets and those photos all week long on All-Star Live, July 7th through July 15th. Of course, there are plenty of All-Stars in our lives, and that includes the men and women who bravely serve and defend our country. And one of those men right now is joined by Tom Hanneman.
Jamie, thanks so much. Major General Rick Nash, we are honored to have you here today.
Thank you, sir.
An amazing resume that Rick Nash has as the Adjutant General, the head, really, the boss, if you will, of the 13,000 men and women that serve our country here in the Minnesota National Guard. And we're here to talk about the All-Star Salutes program we have every night on All-Star Live, dedicated to the men and women of the military, the National Guard here in Minnesota. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the individuals and the folks that we're going to be able to see here in the next week?
Sure, Tom, I'd be happy to. Tomorrow, you're going to have Colonel Jim Johnson, who's the commander of the 133rd Airlift Wing right here in Minneapolis. And I think he's going to talk to you a little bit about Colonel Hubert and his family and their involvement as citizen soldiers. And it's a family tradition in the 133rd, so I hope your viewers will enjoy that. And then he'll be followed by Colonel St. Sauber, who's the commander of Camp Ripley, our state military training facility just north of Little Falls, 53,000 acres, where not only Minnesota National Guards have been trained, but all military from across the nation also use that facility, along with a number of our interagency partners, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Natural Resources, Public Safety uses that for our highway patrol training for the academy, so it's a great facility, and he'll highlight some of the things that we do other than just training for the military. That'll be followed up with Colonel Jensen, who's our Chief of Staff for the Joint Force Headquarters here in Minnesota, and he'll talk to you about the other things that we do throughout the state of Minnesota, protecting the citizens that we have in our 63 communities where we have facilities around Minnesota. And I think you'll find that interesting. I think it'll enlighten your audience in terms of the things that we do here in Minnesota each and every day. Hopefully we're going to have a link with Colonel Greg Thingvold, who's in Fort Hood, Texas right now, preparing his 34th Combat Aviation Brigade for deployment to Kuwait early in August. 220 soldiers from Minnesota are there training, and they'll follow that up with that deployment. And then we'll close out the week with Brigadier General Neil Lloydel, who will talk to you about the 34th Infantry Division that he commands, one of 8 divisions in the National Guard across the nation, and his most recent visit commemorating the 70th anniversary of the Italian campaign by the 34th Infantry Division. That, by the way, as you met General Jack Vesey on Sunday, who throughout the first pitch, yes, served in that 34th Division at that time. And so I think you'll find his stories and his on-the-ground commemoration of the battlefields and cemeteries very enlightening.
People and stories we look forward to bringing to you leading up to the All-Star Game next Tuesday. Help us understand a little bit what differentiates the National Guard from other arms of the military.
Sure. We're a little unique in the National Guard in that when our soldiers and airmen enlist, they take an oath to the Constitution, both the federal Constitution and the state Constitution, because we have 2 missions. When we're not deployed by the President of the United States in Title 10 overseas, then we are underneath the command and control of our Commander-in-Chief as the Governor of the state of Minnesota, as is all soldiers across the United States. Their commander is the Governor. But when we're mobilized, then we're underneath the control and the command of the President of the United States. And so we have a dual mission, and so we spend the bulk of our time responding to natural and man-made disasters in the United States, specifically here in Minnesota. But we train on the same missions, the same equipment, the same standards, just we spend less time doing that than an active component. But we mirror our active duty counterparts both in the Army and in the air.
I want to ask you as well about on Sunday in the game against the Yankees. There was a terrific ceremony on Military Appreciation Day, and the Minnesota Twins were named a Yellow Ribbon Company. Can you explain to us what a Yellow Ribbon Company is?
Sure. That program started in Minnesota with some ideas from the former Adjutant General and Governor Pawlenty. And it grew from about 2007 in terms of supporting our military, Guard, Reserve, active duty. Not only the member, but their family, And so they pull together, and it's a network of systems that I mentioned the 63 communities that we're involved in across Minnesota and the 2 air bases in Duluth and Minneapolis. But they set up a support network when our soldiers and airmen are deployed. And it helps them with financial issues, educational issues, legal issues, educational issues, so that when that member is gone, that community kind of falls in behind them and helps them with issues that they may have with a spouse that's left behind that has to have some support with a car issue, some appliance issues, a roof issue, snow plowing, cutting the lawn. And so it's a network of networks across Minnesota. And we now have over 270 of those across Minnesota, cities and counties and regions, corporations like Best Buy, U.S. Bank, Target. In fact, tomorrow the governor is going to proclaim Cargill as a Yellow Ribbon Corporation. Sunday, the governor was present, as you know, at the Twins game and proclaimed the Twins, and we're very happy to have that being designated. Twins have been great supporters of the military, as they have been for the last 11 years, highlighting our service and our families. And I see you're wearing the Twins Yellow Ribbon pin, which is, we thank you for that. But the Twins have been a great organization, from the Pohlads to Dave St. Peter and Kevin Smith, and, you know, the manager, Ron Gardenhire, with Jack Vesey the other day, with receiving the first pitch from him. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was just a great event.
When we think of the National Guard, obviously there is deployment overseas, and yet so often, and just recently in the spring again with flooding and high water, they come to the aid, to the rescue of so many Minnesotans. I mean, it must be a pleasure to be involved in helping so many people in so many places.
Right, and we train for that, and we're always ready for that. As you mentioned, Tom, in the opening segment, we have over 13,000 citizen soldiers, airmen and those in the Army, that we can respond to the governor's call and Homeland Security for natural disasters, tornadoes, fires, floods. Recently, within the last couple of weeks, we're at International Falls on the Rainy River with flood control and helping that community because they didn't have enough citizens to protect property. At the same time, we were down in Henderson, Minnesota, doing the same thing, a small community, mudslides, blocking roads, watching the levees to make sure they didn't break or have leakage to flood homes. So that's the types of things that we do when we're not serving overseas.
You and I grew up in a time when soldiers came back from Vietnam and weren't appreciated the way they should have been. It must be wonderful now to be a part of a country where people look at the military and are always thanking all of you for what you have done.
Right. It's very appreciated by our soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Marines across Minnesota, active and reserve. And I talked to a number of them at the Twins game, and they were just in awe of the appreciation showed to them by the Twins organization that day and their families, as well as what the Twins did with the Gold Star families who have lost loved ones.
Are you a baseball fan? Are you looking forward to the All-Star game?
I am. Unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town, and I'm going to be traveling overseas, and I don't think I'll be able to watch it, but I'm sure we're going to DVR it so I can watch it when I get back home. But it's going to be a wonderful event.
Major General Rick Nash, thank you so much for coming by our Fox
Thanks for
Sports
doing this for our soldiers and airmen.
It is our pleasure, indeed.
Thank you, sir.
We thank you for all that you have done. His office, by the way, is rather large around the globe, but we hope he gets a chance to watch at least a replay of what should be a pretty exciting All-Star game next Tuesday.